podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Okay, and with Andy Slater from the Barmy Article fanzine, following the Manchester United women's team. Andy, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Good to be on.
Yeah, honestly, I've been meaning to get people on to talk about the women's team for so long, and what with everything that's going on, didn't quite manage it. I follow, but I have to admit, I'm not at all the games, so it's great to have someone who definitely is.
Yeah, I've been a fanatic of the men's team for so many years. So when the women's team started up, and it's so close to where I live, I started off thinking I'll get to a few games, but very quickly got hooked on it. It filled the gap that not going to Old Trafford anymore provided. So yeah, it does draw you in once you get access and you see what it's about. It does draw you in the same as the men's team always did.
Yeah, we're just on the eve of the Women's World Cup, of course, and there's a few United players there. Perhaps a couple fewer than we'd like to actually be Manchester United players. So I guess maybe we can start with the elephant in the room. How are you feeling about the departures of Onabache and Alessia Russo? I mean, quite a shock. Well, maybe not a shock, but quite a blow to the team.
Yeah, they are two different questions, really, because they're very different situations.
Yeah.
We start with the positive. Onabache, we got her because of the loophole in Spanish transfers. There's a rule where Spanish clubs have to pay a premium if they buy in youth from Spanish teams, which meant Barcelona weren't going to get her 3 years ago, which opened the door for us. Now, She is Catalan. She's played for, as well as playing for Spain, she's played for the Catalan national team, if you want to call it that.
Right, yeah.
Once. So, she's proud Barca, she's proud Catalan. And she was always going to go back there. She's given everything while she's been at United for the 3 years. She's never caused a problem right up to the end of this season. She's been world class. Probably the closest to irreplaceable that you'd get for Man United women in the 5 years they've been going. So that wasn't a shock, but it's probably the biggest blow. I think she is genuinely world class and still so young, and she's got so much to come. And she's a fullback, but she's been our biggest attacking threat. So
yeah, right.
Extremely sad to see her go, but it was always coming. And we bought Jade Riviere last January. So she's a fullback. She's not that experienced in domestic football, but she's played a lot of time for Canada, and we've got high hopes for her. So I feel like we were prepared for Honor's departure. It'll be interesting to see how she fits in to fill that gap, and how the team changes, whether we focus more on midfield, because I think the midfield's a bit conservative to allow Honor to attack. I think she's that good that the team is structured around getting the best out of her. So we might see changes for that.
It's not often that the fullback is one of the most exciting players in the team, but certainly when I've watched United women, her ability to sort of really bomb forward, incredible pace, delivery, goal threat occasionally as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, complete player. And then Alessia Russo, I guess that's a shock because is it the player that wanted to go? Is it the money? Is it the club refusing to pony up the cash for a new contract? How do you see that one all shaking out?
It's been a funny 12 months or so, because with the Euros happening last summer and obviously the World Cup this summer, she had the 1 year left on her contract. United obviously wanted her to renew. She probably quite sensibly waited till after the Euros. She did well at the Euros. She made a name for herself, mainly through that back heel, but with other substitute performances as well. And the Euros win obviously added to the hype of all players involved in that tournament. So she came back. We thought, right, she can add another 0 to the contract offer. We hear that United made reasonable offers, that her brother, who's her agent, was quite open to speaking to a lot of other clubs, anyone who would listen to him, it seems. And it became a circus. And I think that probably contributed to a bit of distraction. And she's got the potential to be a world-class player. But I think for a young player, you can say that they will reach that potential. But she's good enough to be hitting that now. But she doesn't quite do it. United have spread the goals around this season quite a lot. Russo scored, I think, 11, maybe 12 goals.
Right. Yeah.
But Leah Galton scored the same number. We haven't had one main goal threat. Now, it's good to have that. If you get in a proper number 9, do you lose that from around the pitch? But Russo's good enough to be an all-rounder and score the goals, but she's not quite doing it.
Right.
It might be due to the distraction of the circus around the transfer, might be because she's just not quite ready to take that next step, but she's become a player that, while we didn't want to lose her, I don't think we'll miss as much as people think.
Okay.
And the discussion around the replacements are in the kind of bracket that we want Man United to be having conversations in. There are 2 Brazilians that we're linked with who would be a step up at Russo's current level. So it's disappointing how it's gone, but she's not left with half of the love that Onabache is left with because of how it's been handled.
And then we're 5 years into this team now, and last season cup final, second in the league, so close, but qualified for the Champions League. I mean, your assessment of where we're at now, outside of the transfer shenanigans and question marks about whether there's going to be investment or not.
I think it's an incredible step up. I think if last summer you'd have said we would scrape into the top 3, which are the Champions League places, on the last day of the season on goal difference, we'd have took it. But instead, at the last day of the season, we still had a faint hope of winning the league. It was very faint. We weren't expecting any Reading to get anything from Chelsea, but mathematically it was still possible, and that was incredible. Casey Stoney started 5 years ago with a 5-year plan to win the league within 5 years. Now, when she left 2 years ago, you thought, right, a few steps back, reset, build again. But we were close to doing that in Mark Skinner's second season. And I think it's an incredible step up. The way the team has played, the way they've shared the goals around, it's just been a thrilling season to be involved in. Some of the late goals, which, to assess the football, you could say you can't rely on late goals so much. United men's team did it famously in '99, was a big season for late winners. It's been that kind of season. There have been games that have been key games where you've thought we're not going to get over the line. And then as the season's gone on, the same situation, you'd be thinking, it's going to come. We're going to do it. They've given us that confidence. We hope to see a progression where we're controlling games and not being in that position. But for the occasion, for those nights where you're at the game, you struggle to pick highlights. There are too many. Late winners against Arsenal at the Emirates.
Yeah.
The cup final, because you've done it a few times, we're 1-0 down and we're thinking we might do it there, and we had a few late chances. We had a late winner against Villa away.
That's right, yeah.
We would have still been confident of getting top 3, but that kept us involved in the title race at that point. Brighton, we beat Brighton 4-0 twice, but then in the FA Cup semi-final, made hard work of that and won 3-2 with another thrilling game. So it's the level of the players has shot up. The level of the support has shot up. There's swelling numbers through since the Euros, but also people seem to realise now what it means. That there are elements of crowd that go and just enjoy football, just enjoy some live football. But there's been certain games where you can feel a change in the atmosphere, where people realise this means something, and the crowd get behind it, the crowd get involved, and that's been great to see as well, where the culture of the fan base has shifted.
Yeah, and I mean, Leigh Sports Village is always a question because it's so far outside of Manchester and it's fairly difficult to get to, of course. But you talked about the swelling crowds and the Barmy Army there certainly keep the atmosphere really lively. I mean, it was so quick for United to build an atmosphere. I mean, I've been to quite a few United women's games, and it was noticeable how quickly that happened. I mean, even the Championship. But where does that go from here? I mean, you're expecting the World Cup to help generate a lot more interest in the women's team?
I think there are different types of interest. There's There are those that were there in the Championship wanting to watch any team that wears United shirt will be supported. And there was certainly a crossover from people with men's football experience that kind of got together quite quickly to try to replicate some parts of that in the women's game. And it was quite unheard of at the time that fans didn't have songs, fans didn't have flags. There was very little of that kind of interaction going on. So it was great to see that grow on that side of it. But then the Euros brought the Lioness fan base, and because we've got Russo, we've got Toon, we've got Mary Earps, there's been a huge influx of photograph hunters who 5 minutes before the end go and stand at the front and put the signs up and block the view. And it's the last moments of a game, you want to enjoy it. So we want the numbers to grow, but we kind of wouldn't mind if some fans follow Alessia Russo to Arsenal and hold the cardboard signs up at the Emirates, or just elsewhere than in front of us when we're trying to watch the dying moments of a thrilling game.
Yeah.
So I do hope that women's football fans in general get more involved in the football rather than the accessibility of the superstars that they adore. You want that interaction, you want that role model accessibility, but you don't want it to interfere with the football. So yes, we want numbers to grow.
Isn't it? Yeah, you do. Because the men's game, it's almost impossible to access the players, and in fact, the similar thing has happened there, where you get autograph hunters, professional autograph hunters, sort of mobbing the players, and it's become a bit of a problem. So the accessibility is part of why women's football is so attractive, I guess, especially to the more family audience. But yes, you don't want to spoil the viewing, the fan experience as well at the same time. Arsenal last year got a kind of huge average crowd. That was a lot to do with having, I think they played 4 games at the Emirates and got really big crowds for those. What are your thoughts on the club playing more games at Old Trafford? Does that change the dynamic of the fan base? It sort of build it and they will come seems to work as well in terms of attracting more people.
Yeah, I think we've seen 3 games at Old Trafford where fans have been allowed. 2 of them were this season. That was the first time they've done 2 in one season. There's been numbers like 20,000, 30,000. And, that for Old Trafford, you would think you could attract higher numbers. When we went to the Emirates, I think we took 3,000 in the away end. There were 40,000 overall. And yeah, they're in London. It's easily accessible for anybody to jump on the tube and get down there. But with better promotion, I would think they could get better numbers at Old Trafford. But one of the drawbacks to Old Trafford is you lose that. It is still a relatively small number of vocal fans that they're in the safe standing section at Old Trafford when we've had our home matches there. And it's been great to be in that section and watch the team in a stadium that we're familiar with. But it does lose that kind of, when I started going, through 21 years as season ticket for United men, I've been to the big grounds, all the shiny stadiums. And what I enjoyed in the early days of watching United women was the small kind of grassroots stadiums and the way you can impact the game with the atmosphere. And I think we do lose some of that at Old Trafford. But that's partly down to the way they set it up as well. They're appealing to families to come. They're having a band on in the ground. Not before the match, the brass band during the game, which United fans will watch it on telly and hear that in the background and think, is this what women's football is? So you want the bigger numbers, you want the historic stadiums, you want the players to get the chance to play at Old Trafford. The ones that grew up as United fans will have dreamed about that with no real pathway to do it. So it's great to see them live out those dreams and us get to go back to the ground that we have loved following United at. But I think we, United as a club, need to do it better. And I'd like to see that improvement. There is good fan engagement, so hopefully that will improve the kind of match day that I expect, that I want to go to. Obviously, some people will love it, but as football fans rather than fans of the spectacle, I think the club can be better at that.
And coming to the team and moving forward, Mark Skinner, obviously successful season last season, doesn't stop people moaning about him. But isn't that true of any football base football fan base ever talking about the manager. But how do you feel about him? I mean, Casey Stoney, very young manager, but well loved, departed in not uncontroversial circumstances, and Skinner's sort of come in and got his own style. So how do you feel about him as a manager?
I think the way he talks in interviews, I think probably isn't necessarily to my liking. It's all sounds a little bit hippie like at times, which I've no issue with that. But when you're managing a football team, I think it just sounds a bit strange. But the way he's getting results, the players, in my view, from what I see in interviews and interactions after games, the players seem to love him. The ones that are in that core group of players. I think he can be a bit slow to make changes. I think he's got a small group of players that he trusts, and it'll take him time to kind of move around the players and build his own squad. But I think football-wise, I think he's doing great. I see him as ambitious. He wants United to be the best. He doesn't want us to go 1-0 up and hold back, which we have done under him at times. In his first season, there were frustrations where we'd be 1-0 up. We wouldn't really be very positive, and we lost a lot of points that way. But I think he's moved along from that. I like the football we play under him, and he's an easy manager to support and get behind and get on the journey with. Like you said, all fan bases have the negative elements. I think it is a bit of a strange negative element that United women's fan base has. There are some fair criticisms, but they get lost in a lot of ad hominem. It's Skinner, it's bad, what's he done that for? Right. It's always Skinner's fault. But I think that probably gets highlighted more because you've got loud voices in smaller numbers. Those kind of voices in Man United men Twitter is probably 1%. Those kind of voices in Man United women Twitter is maybe 10%. So I think it's louder because of that rather than that it's prominent. I think when you're in the ground, the majority of fans, oblivious to the Twitter side of it, are fully supportive.
Yeah, well, I mean, in many respects, that's true of men's football as well. And I don't want to keep making the comparison because it's unfair, isn't it? But the difference between in-match crowd and what's important to people and how you feel about the game, very different to the mega fan base of the Twitter sphere and all of that nonsense and noise. And it is. And someone said to me once, never read the bottom half of the internet, and Twitter is only the bottom half of the internet. So
absolutely.
And so what do we need next season then? I mean, obviously there's a transfer window now. There's been a lot of talk about new players coming in. None yet, or correct. Maybe correct me there. Actually, I think someone signed the other day, but no really big names yet. But what are we looking for in the summer, and how do we progress from what was an excellent season last season?
So the one signing so far is Gemma Evans, who was at Reading last season, who got relegated. It's that signing in itself. We presume that she's there to replace Tunkara, who's left, but that's replacing who turned out to be our fourth choice centre back. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of admin rather than excitement.
Mm-hmm.
The conversations that are happening, there's a lot of talk around two Brazilians, Carolyn and Jay-Z. Mm-hmm. I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's Geyse. I believe Jay-Z is the correct pronunciation.
That would be a real turn up for the books if Jay-Z turned out for you.
It would. Certainly. And I wonder if Beyonce would come with him as well if that was the case.
I mean, I'd sign us all up. We'd like to see that. Yeah, thanks.
So, yeah, they're the kind of level that people have been wanting and that we probably wouldn't be talking about if we hadn't got into the Champions League. There are some players that are already at the club that haven't really had an impact yet. I mentioned earlier Jade Riviere. Mm-hmm. I believe she was signed with the plan of her replacing Anna Batche as she inevitably left. So I think that's the right-back replacement sorted already. Lisa Nalsson was signed and has barely played. Mark Skinner likes to integrate players into the squad before throwing them into the team sometimes. There are some exceptions to that, but he does like to kind of focus on teaching them his way before they get near the pitch. And I think that was happening with Lisa Nalsson. And then when she did start, she got injured and missed most of the rest of the season.
Mm.
So there's a lot of excitement around her. So she's somebody we've not seen much of yet. And it'll be exciting to see her added to the midfield. But I think last summer, we added depth quite well. We made 7 signings and they were quite varied. Kirsty Hansen has been on loan at Aston Villa this summer and has done very, very well. She was a right winger, but she seems to have played quite a bit on the left. And having her on the left as backup to Leah Galton would be a suitable situation for me. We've got Nikita Paris on the right, as well as Lucia Garcia, who's plays less often, but is very exciting when she does. I think if she starts playing more of each match, I think she has a massive impact when she comes on.
She does. Would you like to see her start more? And what's the thinking behind her being more of an impact sub?
I think she's a lot younger than Paris. I think Paris has a lot more experience, and I think that will be vital going into the Champions League, which she has won with Lyon. So I think Garcia is 24, maybe. She's not a young kid who's just learning a trade. She is a competent professional. I think her style of football is more impactful, and I feel like when she does start, she doesn't quite have the same impact on the game, and subs can be a huge tool in the women's game. And the difference she makes when she comes on, maybe to her personal detriment, means she's better starting on the bench and coming on later on. I think that not link up, but that kind of interchangeability with Nikita Paris probably adds to that. I think Paris is good to have in the early stages of a game, and a bit more. The experience probably shows a lot more. But if I see either one of those two on the team sheet on the right hand side, I'm happy enough. I probably struggle to pick who I'd want both fully fit, who I'd want start in any particular game. It might depend on the game itself. The main thing is that we want to add is a goal scorer. Approaching the end of last season, I had the internal debate of, do we want a proper number 9, or will that reduce goals from elsewhere in the team and we'll become too reliant? The late goals we've scored, we've managed to score them, so we do have goal scorers. We have players who can grab a goal when needed. But then the FA Cup final swung it for me and made me decide that my personal preference would be get a proper number 9 who you'd bet your house on in front of goal. They had Sam Kerr, who scores against us almost every time they play us.
Yes,
and that's what we need.
Carolyn, who you mentioned, plays over where I live in the States in NWSL, which, I mean, it's obviously begun. I guess it's been professionalized for longer than the WSL. Gets really good crowds. My local team is OL Reign. They often play these double headers with the Sounders at the Giant Stadium. I don't know whether it really suits them because 70,000 stadium and people start wandering away, but there's good support there, and obviously the link up with the European club in Olympique Lyon there. But do you think there's a pathway for more sort of women from who are playing in the NWSL to come to the WSL? How do the finances stack up? I mean, can English clubs afford those players?
I think, can they afford them? Certainly, yes, as they're backed by the men's clubs. But do we want them to be throwing that money around, being subsidised by the men's clubs? In the early stages, yes, but it needs to become sustainable.
Yeah.
We have seen some Americans play in the WSL, mainly through COVID, where they didn't have any football to play over there. United got Kristen Press and Tobin Heath.
Right.
We saw Alex Morgan came over and played at Spurs. We have had the temporary American visits to the WSL. Heath then played for Arsenal after she played for United. So there is some draw to the WSL. I think the standard is getting better. I think from a bigger picture perspective, I think United breaking that top 3 stranglehold will improve that, because instead of superstars having 3 teams to choose from, they've now got 4. They've got other teams that are ambitious and will look at United and think, United have got the name, but they've not necessarily been playing with the same budget that you would need, you expect to need to break into that. So other clubs might look at that and think, why can't we knock on that top 3 door? And Aston Villa developed a whole lot last season, especially with some January signings. So there are more clubs getting to a level that might attract these bigger names, and even with how professional the US game has been for a lot longer, your second tier of players are going to be at a level that can compete well in the WSL. So if they can go from second tier in America to top tier players in the WSL, then why wouldn't they? The wages are certainly rising. The players that are being attracted to the WSL from elsewhere in Europe is growing. So I think there's certainly a draw for those players to come over, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned the finances. It's a kind of interesting dichotomy at United. So the United's women's finances look very, very healthy, but about, I don't know, a couple of million of the 5 million budget is effectively co-marketing with the men's team, which in a sense is good, right? It's promoting the women's game as well, but it's effectively a subsidy. So how long do we take to sort of for the women's team to sort of stand on its own 2 feet financially, and because there's been this debate in women's football, hasn't it? Should more money be pumped in from either from the FA or from the WSL, the Premier League, or Premier League clubs, and the men's game effectively, versus a pathway to real sort of organic women's revenue, which will come with a brand new TV deal, I guess. There'll be a lot more money there.
Yeah, it's there are different ways of looking at it. You've got, with the joint marketing, you've got the clouding around which portion of that marketing fee should be for the men, should be for the women, if you're looking at it as which each team has attracted. To combat that, you could keep the marketing separate, but then people will call for one club, will call for unity, they call for equality. And you don't get that if you keep it separate. You want to be seen as, one Manchester United. So it's interesting on how the club can approach that, and you're always going to disappoint somebody. Somebody will either want it to be separate so we can make our own money. Some people will want it to be linked so that we can be seen as in the same bracket as top women players, be in the same bracket as top men's players. So I think there's the various answers to that are always going to annoy somebody, which is often the case in football. I think as the crowds grow, we'll see that money come in. I think ticket revenue for men's teams is a fairly small portion of their overall income. I think in women's teams, it's a lot more substantial as a percentage. United's tickets have just gone up from £39 for a season ticket to £60, and that's still on the cheaper end of other WSL ticket prices as well. There would certainly be room for charging more. Not that I want them to. I'm quite happy to pay £60. I was very happy to pay £39, but looking at the game itself and what the game deserves and needs, you'd still be looking at reasonable prices if you added a fair bit more onto that, which would, for the numbers that are coming, if those numbers still came at the new prices, is going to add a lot more income. The merchandise side of it, it's a funny story again, because you've got players like Onabachi who rarely get mention on the posters and on the advertising campaigns, despite being clearly the best player. But you're in England. England have just won the Euros. Most of your audience who's going to buy that merch are probably going to be England fans. So it makes sense to appeal to it. So the Euros winners, as much as I'm probably quite stereotypical as a United fan that I don't really care about England, I like to see United players do well at England and get that personal achievement. But it does add to the marketability of certain players, and it's kind of sad to see that they automatically get put up on a pedestal because they're English. But that's nothing new either, is it? From the men's game,
that's true.
Always a bit of a English bias.
United's finance director recently called for a hard salary cap in the women's game. It's kind of interesting because I think that has always been completely rejected because of competition reasons in the men's game. Is that what we need? How did fans take that one? Because the one part of my brain said, she's only saying that because they don't want to spend the money. Yeah. But is that what, do we need that in order to make it sustainable?
I think in sports in general, I think salary caps are a good idea. It's in place in rugby league. And there are rumours that some clubs find ways around it, but it's there to try and keep it more level. Obviously, in the US, they've got the draft system as far as recruitment. They've got a lot of things to try and help the teams at the bottom find the way back up and even it out. I think with English football, if men's football has gone beyond that, I don't think you really can say, well, in women's football, we need to do this. It's like, if you think it is necessary in women's football, then you're acknowledging that men's football has gone way out of control and is unsustainable, which it probably is. We're seeing a club goes up for sale and only the richest billionaires and even some billionaires can't afford to buy a football club because of the way it's gone. So it is unsustainable.
Well, the interesting thing about salary caps is in the US, one of the things it's really done is allow owners to take even more money out, because it makes clubs profitable, because when you get 20 teams competing against each other, or even more, you take in European clubs, then it's an arms race. They all going to spend more and more and more and more until they get the right players. And across the Premier League, for all the money that is in there, it's value destroying in business speak, right? You'd be better taking your money and setting it on fire. You'd make more money that way, but well, not quite. But it's kind of an interesting concept, isn't it? I think it's the first sort of sign that people are thinking about ways to make the women's game. They want to grow, but also make it sustainable.
Yeah.
And maybe the current sort of soft salary cap isn't quite working, because I think we've realised that many of the women's clubs are able to use the main, I don't know what's the right way of putting it, the men's team revenue to cross subsidise, and it's kind of allowed, sort of. So
exactly.
You mentioned the World Cup, just to move track a little bit, and you being a typical sort of United fan and poo-pooing the England team, because I do the same thing, and we were all sort of brought up like that, aren't we? But then the tournament comes along, and you get all excited about it. So what are you looking forward to? I mean, apart from the 4 a.m. starts to watch the games, what are we going to see from this tournament?
I think as a United fan, I think the main draw for me is Katie Zellem's involvement.
Yeah, right.
Mary Earps is England's first choice goalkeeper. That's established. Ella Toone, she came on after an hour in every game at the Euros and had an impact. So I think she'll probably see more minutes this time, which I think she's one that has underperformed a little bit for us. She's such an excellent player that even a good performance looks like underperforming. So it'll be interesting to see how she does in the England team and who she interacts with well, how she links up with Alessia Russo now that best friend story is gone the separate ways. But Katie Zellem's the one that, as a United fan, you're most personally excited for with her call-up. She's club captain. She won the league with Juventus in their first season and then sacrificed Champions League football to come back to United in the Championship, such as her support of United. So it's good to see her get the personal achievement of getting called up to the England squad, and I'd like to see her get some minutes and enjoy that. You see a family around Lee Sports Village, and the accessibility of that side becomes a bit more personal. You're happy for people to go and do their thing. So yeah, Katie will be the one that we look out for and want to see how she gets on. I think there will probably be an element of the United fan base that will want to watch how England's defence do and take any opportunity to say that Maya Letitia should have been there, which I believe she should have been.
Excellent season, and I think a lot of pundits said the same thing, so it's not just United fans who were surprised about that.
So I think there will be an element of waiting for any little mistake to say Maya wouldn't have done that, Maya would have been better. So it'll be interesting to see the social media side of that situation. I'm quite happy for her to stay home and have a rest. What I did find interesting was Nikita Paris's exclusion. She went to the Euros after a subpar season for Arsenal. She's come to United. She wasn't a guaranteed starter. I think Garcia was probably just edging her out of the team until she got injured, and then Paris stepped up, played a bit up front when Russo was injured. I think she's had a very good season for United, and I'm surprised that having been selected for the Euro squad and then had a much better season has been excluded from the World Cup squad. Again, I think she's going to be key for us in the Champions League, so I'm glad about that as a United fan. But I think that was a bit of a strange decision for England. But yeah, keep her home, get her rested, get her ready for a Champions League push. The Champions League qualifiers will be involved in her in October, and it's quite a late World Cup, so as many players as we can keep at home and get rested for that and make sure we get into the Champions League proper, the better. But yeah, look forward to seeing Katie Zellem and see what she can push herself onto.
Feels like she's really earned it. I mean, being on the fringes England squad, not always made it into that squad, and definitely seems to deserve that call up. and improved as a player as well. I mean, you mentioned Mary Earps. I have to say 5 years ago, wasn't sure she was... She didn't play the first season with United, did she, in the Championship? Joined
Nope.
the season afterwards when Chamberlain retired. I wasn't sure she was ever going to be this good. One of those players who's improved remarkably and taking on a real leadership role as well.
Yeah. I think with Mary Earps, one of the things that you saw at the ground in the early days was she had a bit of a swagger about her. So even if she was making mistakes, she always had an air of arrogance that probably goalkeepers need and players who want to make it at a top club need. So that was always a point that you could see off the ball. It wasn't things that you'd see watching on telly, but certainly as she's walking on the pitch, as she's warming up and in between play, you would certainly see that in the ground and think she's got the confidence to take that step. And I think that's been a huge plus for United as a team in general, aside from just the goalkeeping skills, because we all like a little bit of the kind of arrogance that Cantona had, where it's not the kind of arrogance where you think I'm better than you lot, but it's the arrogance that says I am going to be better than you lot, and the kind that pushes you on and gives you that entitlement to keep pushing for better.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think all professional sports people need to have incredible confidence spilling over into arrogance. And then there's deeply arrogant, I don't know, Michael Schumacher. And then there's some other level, which is hard to reach, which is, I think, Dean Henderson levels. Maybe we need another term for it. But when you're so far above your actual ability, that it seems to push you onto something anyway. Great. I mean, the Champions League is going to be fascinating for United, isn't it? When's the actual draw made for those games? And when can we expect to see those big names coming to Leigh Sports Village or Old Trafford?
So I think they've done the draw for the round one of qualifying, I think, and then it's strange how it works. There's a Champions path and a League path, and then there's kind of a 4-team groups where they play a semi-final and then the finalists. So it's not a group as we would expect it. It's just a mini tournament, and then the winners go through to round 2 and join the teams that are already in that. So I'm not sure when we know who's in round 2 in full. Some of the teams on the list that United could potentially face in the qualifiers, which are on the last 2 weeks of October, this first and second leg, and Real Madrid are a possibility. Wolfsburg, BK Häcken, I believe, are in there.
Okay.
Who am I missing? I'm definitely missing somebody. There are some big names that we could face, which, as far the kind of teams that if we lost a semi-final to, you'd say we'd done really well. But if we lose in a qualifier to, you'll say we failed to even qualify and it's a failure, despite it being against the same level of team. So you kind of want the big names because you want to see us play against them, you want to test us, but you kind of want an easy ride to get into the groups and guarantee that 6 games that you get in the group stages.
Yeah, Wolfsburg, of course, have an incredible history in European football. And Real Madrid, much newer team. Right, one of the last big clubs around Europe to start a women's team, I think.
Yeah, but I think they have, as Real Madrid do, I think they have thrown money at it and reached levels that it's easy for people to compare to United and say they're newer than us and look where they are. But they have been typical Real Madrid and pumped the money in and kind of forced themselves to that level. So as new as they are, they've got some talent, which, well, I'd be confident with us going into any game at the minute, but they're always going to be a threat.
All right, and before we leave, tell us about the fanzine. I mean, I think just off air, you were saying 10 issues in now. What's the reaction been to that? And such a lot of work putting one of these things together. So how do you go about building it and getting it out there?
As much as we talked earlier about Twitter being only the bottom half of the internet, it's been necessary. I'm not a big tweeter. I'm more of a reader on Twitter, but I do find myself having to try and push myself to tweet more and get it out there because the size of the crowd at the game isn't enough to sustain it. You need that online presence and online sales, which I'd say it's probably quite even for online and at the match sales. Either one drops and it wouldn't carry on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, getting it out there on Twitter as much as possible. I've got a Substack newsletter so that we're not relying on the algorithm for people to see a tweet when a new one comes out. I can drop a newsletter right in the inbox to make sure people know it's available. I started because from going to Old Trafford all those years, one of the key sounds that I remember from those days are the shouts of the fanzine sellers.
Yeah, that's right.
Red News United We Stand, and of course Red Issue when that was around. And you walk into the ground and you hear that, and that's that along with the sound of the old turnstiles, the big clunk, click, click, click. And the other one I would say is before in the East Stand Lower we were standing up all the time, you'd be sat down, you'd stand up for an attack, and the seats hitting the back of the seat as they flipped up would sound like thunder coming along. So those three for me are three kind of core memory sounds from watching football. And so fanzine's been such a big part of that. It was just always there when I went watching United Men. I wrote a couple of times for Red News, and I always thought there should be one. There should be one for the women's team. There's a lot of thirst for content. A couple of YouTube channels popped up, and I thought printed version. It's traditional. It's the classic. You can't be knee jerk when you're printing a magazine. You've got to be considered. You can't throw one opinion out on a YouTube video one day and then retract it the next and change your mind.
Yeah.
So you've got to. I think it's something that was missing for the women's game. There was content popping up everywhere, but I thought that was a huge gap. And then I thought, well, I can't sit here thinking it should exist and wait for somebody else to do it. So I asked around a few people and got a few people involved who had the necessary skills to put it together, and we got issue 1 out at the end of 2 summers ago. So there were no matches to sell it at. It was purely sold online. And since then, each issue was funded the next one. I interviewed Casey Stoney after she'd left. In a later issue, I interviewed Willie Kirk, who was the assistant manager at the beginning and left after 6 months to go manage Everton. He's now managing Leicester and kept them up. So I interviewed him as an ex-assistant manager. I also interviewed Rachel Brown-Finnis, as she's an admirer of United and was involved in a conversation in the early days around that we talked about the difference in support. And in the early days, you didn't know if singing songs was accepted. Can I do this? There's nobody else doing it. And she said to Natalie, who was around from the beginning as well, love the singing, keep it up. She was there to kind of reassure us that the players want that. So it was interesting to get her involvement and interview her for the fanzine as well. Also done a couple of interviews with some ex-players who played before we were disbanded in 2005. So it was great to get their insight on those who, the kind of pay-to-play generation. And the journey it's taken me on to meet these people and talk about things that I hadn't really considered before. It's been great for me to get involved in that and learn it firsthand, and then to put that into words and pass it on. And also to get other people involved, because I don't want it to be 20 pages of my opinion. I want there to be as many people involved as possible. I want people who disagree to write it down and put it in. I want conflicting arguments in there side by side. I want it to be as representative as possible. And
I think that's right.
Yeah, I'm loving that side of it. The kind of not bringing people together as such. I wouldn't claim that much, but at least providing some kind of a platform that anybody can contribute to.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think fanzines do a really important job of reflecting one part of the fan base. It doesn't have to be for everybody, and print media is obviously somewhat old-fashioned in the internet age, but it stands the test of time. But just super hard. So many congratulations to, I'm sure, the many hours you put into getting that out there. And as we know, with even Red News, Barney's always on the edge, right, of being able to make it sustainable, because print costs money and it's difficult, and there are many things that get in your way and all of that. So many congrats, and keep it up. Maybe I write a piece for you.
Absolutely, anybody's welcome. The view from across the pond.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, before we came on air, I was expressing my frustrations of sport in America. Much as I'd love what the locals do, I really can't. So I find almost no excitement going to the Sounders at all. In fact, we've got a hyper-local club that's tier 4 of the American soccer system. That's, I think, we get about 2,000 people going each week. It's nice. It's a nice feel too. I actually feel the atmosphere feels very similar to a lot of women's games I've been to.
I think that probably, my view of women's football, when people say what got you into women's football, it's similar kind of thing. I tried watching the women's football show before United had a team, and it didn't matter what level it was. People call it because it's not as good as this level. It's tier 4 men's equivalent or whatever. But for me, the reason I couldn't get into it was because I didn't care.
Yeah,
It wasn't until
needed
United had a
something to
team.
care about. Yeah,
Yeah, it's. I would say even in men's football that I'm a United fan before I am a football fan, and that's what you need. You need a horse in the race. If there was a United team that played tiddlywinks, it'd give you something to support and cheer for. It's the shirt that you're supporting, and I think that's been the huge draw to women's football for me, is that it's another United team that I can get behind, and it feels grassroots again. It feels like kind of what men's football has gone so far away from in that sense.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, good point to start. Andy, many thanks. Tell us where we can find your fanzine if anyone who's listening wants to either pick one up at the game, hopefully, or buy one online.
So on Twitter, SL8R7, and in my bio there's a link tree which has links to the Substack. I do now have a podcast which is weekly throughout the season. It's just 15 minutes long each episode and shows the store of where it can be bought. If you Google Barmy Article, there's not much else with that name, so you'll find it that way as well. If you are at Leigh Sports Village, I stand across from the main stand just outside Morrison's, and I'm there almost every home game, catching the people that aren't on Twitter but still come and check in if there's a new issue. If you don't want to buy it but you just want to come and say hello and ask a question about it, come along, because those matchday interactions are another of the big pluses that I've found from going through this process. But if you can support it, if you like it, sign up for the Substack. If you like that, maybe buy an issue, and then if you like that, maybe buy the next one and the one after.
Perfect. Andy, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.